time for story time. Bryce. I ran up the path to the pro shop, where the golfers checked in and pay. Down a long hallway was the restaurant, and in between were the bathrooms. I passed the indoor tennis courts attached to the main building, and I hoped we'd get to play in there before camp was over. Inside the pro shop were racks of shirts and lots of golf equipment collecting dust. Mr. Grassel huddled with another man in a suit. His name read Tag Manager. They didn't seem to notice as I headed for the bathroom. A few more minutes and the whole thing would have been ruined, Mr. Grassel was saying. The sprinkler hits that stuff and we're dead. Powdered grass killer, the manager said. Yeah, if it had been liquid, I don't even want to think about it. I used a vacuum to pick it up. The manager's face was stern. He pointed in Mr. Grassel's face. This is the second time this has happened on your watch. We like having you here, but... Was that interesting? It's probably kind of boring, right? Today's lesson 11, we're reading with expression, preparing to read the story. Now, let's read our paragraph on page 37. Have you ever heard someone read in monotone, droning on and on, which is what I tried to just do. Monotone is your voice doesn't change pitch. It just kind of stays the same and goes on and on and on and on and on. It's almost torturing. Have you ever heard someone who made the story come alive? Which would you rather listen to? And what made the difference? All right, so I'm going to read my chapter again, all right? Bryce. I ran up the path to the pro shop where the golfers check in and pay. Down a long hallway was the restaurant, and in between were the bathrooms. I passed the indoor tennis courts attached to the main building and hoped we'd get to play in there before camp was over. Inside the pro shop were racks of shirts and lots of golf equipment, collecting dust. Mr. Grassel huddled with another man in a suit. His name tag read Manager. They didn't seem to notice as I headed for the bathroom. A few more minutes and the whole thing would have been ruined, Mr. Grassel was saying. The sprinkler hits that stuff and we're dead. Powdered grass killer, the manager said. Yeah, if it had been liquid, I don't even want to think about it. I used a vacuum to pick it up. The manager's face was stern. He pointed in Mr. Grassel's face. This is the second time this has happened on your watch. We like having you here, but... All right, so which one did you like better? Probably some of you are saying that you like the monotone better, just to, I don't know. But a good reader, if you flip to the next page on page 38, a good reader will use good expressions on his face and in his voice, changing your voice to fit the dialogue. Whisper when a character is whispering. If the story has dialect, try to imitate the dialect. So if the story has conversation, kind of like what I just did, between Mr. Grassel and the manager, dialect. They were talking back and forth, and you try and imitate how the characters are feeling. If a character is frightened, demonstrate that fear by making your voice quiver. Oh no. Maybe a character is angry or he's stern, kind of like Mr. Grassel, shaking his finger. This is the second time this has happened on your watch. Maybe a character is angry. Furrow your eyebrows and make your voice show that anger. If the story has a suspenseful part, slow down and lower your voice. Make it suspenseful. Read the story you have chosen. If the book belongs to you, lightly underline in pencil the words that you will help read the story with expression. If the book is borrowed from a friend, ask if it's all right to mark in this book. Be sure to erase any marks before you return the book. If the book is a library book, don't write in it. Instead, make notes on a piece of paper or a sticky note. Think about facial expressions and gestures you can make to help the story come alive. You will want to make your listeners interested in your reading, all right? So, that's what we're doing in our first part in our lesson today through 1 through 4. You guys are preparing to read a story. That sounds like a lot of fun. So you guys have to pick out a book. Number 1, you have to write the title and author of the book you will read. Number 2, what are some tones of voice that you will use? Number 3, what are some facial expressions you will use? And what are some body gestures you will use, okay? Probably not like this, but So you guys are picking out your book, and then you're gonna pick out a part in your story that you can read with lots of expression and tones of using different tones of your voice and body gestures. You probably now you're not gonna read a whole book. If you can get a smaller book, maybe kind of like a children's book, a smaller book, and then you could read the whole thing. A children's book is going to express a lot of emotion. So you could use one of those. Those would be a really good one probably. But if you just want to pick like any kind of book, maybe like depending how long it is, just read a chapter of it or so. And practice reading your book with good expression and go through it and make sure that you write down on maybe a sticky note. If the book is yours, you can write it in the book, like write that the speaker is angry so you can speak angrily and show anger on your face. Or it's a scary time in the book and you're going to whisper so no one hears you, okay? If you can write that in your book, write that in your book. If it is not your book, use a sticky note and then you can just stick it in your book of parts where you want to maybe use facial expression, use a body gesture, something like that. So, yeah. Like in my book, the manager's face was stern. He pointed in Grossel's face. So I'd be like, this is the second time this has happened on your watch. We like having you here, but, all right? Stuff like that makes your reading come alive and it makes it really interesting for the listeners, all right? That is the beginning part of your new lesson. The ending is a review, so I am not going to go over that on this video. It is predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives, something you guys are familiar with. Read over that, and you guys have to identify some predicate nominatives and adjectives, and you guys are also doing some diagramming. And for your we remember, you have this and that, and our spelling words, this section are words about agriculture. We have hybrid, poultry, chemicals, harrow, equipment, agriculture, sorghum, erosion, pesticide, drought, conservation, acreage, nutrients, legume, fallow, rural, heifer, mulch, silage, and arable. Conservation is the one, and the last one is arable, I believe. That is all we will do for our new part in our video, and I will see you guys later. Don't forget to pick out your story and practice your expressions.